Welcome back to another episode of Trading Secrets. Today, I am joined by one of the fan favorites from season 3 of Netflix, Love is Blind, Nancy Rodriguez. Nancy quickly became one of the more popular members of the cast after accepting the proposal of one of her other cast members, sight unseen. Although her relationship did not end up happily ever after in marriage, Nancy continued to focus on bettering herself both personally and professionally, which is the name of this podcast. Since her season ended, Nancy continued her career as a speech pathologist while also growing her longtime side hustle as a real estate investor. We're going to get into that, exemplifying everything that we love to discuss on Trading Secrets. Today, we're going to talk all things Love is Blind, Nancy's experience during and after the show, where she sees the show going from here, and touching on all the ways she has capitalized from this wild, wild world of social media influencing and this ever-changing real estate market. Nancy, thank you so much for being on Trading Secrets today.
Thank you so much for that intro. Wow, that was a great narration of what has happened
Is
in
there
my life
anything we
lately.
missed in the summary of Nancy Rodriguez
Oh
that we got to
gosh.
touch on today, or was that a good synopsis?
No, I think that's an amazing synopsis. And I think when I envision who I am as a person, like top of mind is like businesswoman.
Wow, I
Like
love
for
that.
me, and I think that's something that was deeply rooted in me through my family.
Mhm.
Both of my parents are business owners. Nothing, they didn't come from that. They're immigrants. They were immigrants when they came to the United States, but even before that, my grandmother, same thing, businesswoman. So yeah, I think other than that, that would be like the little asterisk I would add.
I like that asterisk. Empowering businesswoman, entrepreneur. I love that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, of course, when I read the intro, speech pathologist was on there, but we know that you do have a business background and we know that it was talked about on the show.
Yeah.
Has being on the show kind of catapulted you even further into that world, or would you say that that was still a main priority even before the show?
Yeah, I think for me, before Love is Blind, I was 31 at the time, and I was in such a good place emotionally, financially, just mentally, that I knew that if I was going to go on a reality TV show, it would be Love is Blind.
You knew
I,
that
I just
for
knew it. I
sure.
was like, if I'm gonna do any I think for me, like I was in such a place where I truly loved and appreciated where I was in life and how far I had gotten. At that point, I think I had 5 real estate properties. So I knew that my portfolio was continuing to grow, and I had also just left about a year before Love is Blind. I had left my 9 to 5 because real estate investing was my full time. So yeah, I think for me it was just kind of like, oh, okay, do we want to do Love is Blind? And I get casted and I'm like, all right, we're doing this.
We're going to talk about how you got
You know?
casted, but I want to ask you this because it's
Yeah.
something I think about. When people found out that I was on a reality TV show, they're like, I got to be honest, man. Like, I'm so happy for you and all this stuff worked out. But you're like the last guy in high school or college. I would have been like, he'll be on a reality TV show. Was it on your like vision board? Did you see yourself being in reality TV?
You know what I would have envisioned?
Yeah.
Me on MTV The Challenge.
Ooh, okay.
That's what I would have envisioned myself doing, some like crazy wild like obstacle courses and like, falling into like a pile of mud with beetles or something. I don't know. Like in my mind, I think that's what I envisioned, but never would I have envisioned a dating show, and never would I have envisioned that as part of like my 5 or 10 year plan. So I really do think it was just in a place where my real estate career allowed me the freedom, meaning the time,
Sure.
to be gone for what was it, like 8 to 13 weeks, I think, something like that. And so I was just in a really good place where I had the opportunity to do so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure flexibility was nice when I was in my banking career. Taking that much time off was not easy, and
Yeah.
it turned into me end up getting fired. So there's
Oh
that.
shoot, because of the show?
Because of the show,
Oh
and
wow.
that I worked for a little bit after the
Yeah.
show, and then social media stuff, you share
Yeah.
a lot. There's a little too much shared on Caitlin's podcast, and
Mm,
I got the whack, but that's
okay.
neither here nor there. We've gotten into all those
All
details
for the
before.
better.
All for the
All for
better.
the
All for the
better.
better. Let's talk about Love is Blind for a little bit. So
Yeah.
Love is Blind has maintained top 10 global TV shows every day since season 4 aired. And the season you were on, 168 million hours streamed. It's absolutely mind blowing.
That's really
Not only were you on a reality TV dating show, you were on the biggest one in the entire world. How did they find you?
It's funny that again, like I think about that whole experience, and I was actually in Cancun on a girls' trip, completely disconnected, from my phone, from the internet. And my best friend, who didn't get to go on the trip, reached out to me. Not only did she DM it to me through Instagram, but she texted me. She was like, check your DMs on Instagram now. And that's like code. That is like,
It's
oh
like a
my God,
code. Yeah.
something's going on.
Flags
So,
going off.
yeah, like who did she find? What's the drama?
Yeah.
So sure enough, I went on into my inbox, and she had sent me the Love is Blind casting for Dallas. So I remember thinking, okay, let me have a little thought. Okay, sure, I'll do it. So I tried it once, meaning submitted the application, and it was a lengthy application. They didn't require video admissions, but they did require, like, I don't know, 100 and something questions. Who are you? What are your trades? All these super, like intimate
personality
questions.
type
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, like what would your friends describe you in 3 words, right?
How intimate would it get though? Like, did they get in the weeds or no?
I feel like the first round, it was enough for them to get an idea of like who I was,
Okay.
but not like how many relationships have you, like that was part like 3 or 4. So
Got it. Okay.
yeah, and actually what's so funny, so when you're abroad and
Mhm.
you're disconnected from your phone, Wi-Fi can be spotty, and that's exactly what happened. So I took like an hour to submit this application, and it doesn't. Why? Because I lost internet, I lost Wi-Fi. And I
Ugh.
was like, okay, Love is Blind is not for me. It's fine. Like, I'm going to go enjoy this vacation. I had 2 other opportunities to submit it, and I tried again like the next day. And then on the very last day in Mexico, I was like waiting for my shuttle. And I was like, okay, what the heck? 3rd time's a charm. Maybe it's going to go through. And it went through. So then I got a call. It took about 6 months to get casted. When I finally got the official, like, you're coming, it was probably 3 days before I flew out.
How long did it take from submitting application to getting the phone call?
About 5.5 months.
Oh, so you submitted this into
Yeah.
like a black hole, and 5.5 months later, boom, they showed
Oh,
up.
well, I guess I'm sorry. No, the first phone call happened about 3 weeks later.
Okay.
And then they had follow up, and then they had video, and then they had the like 200 question get to know me application.
Yeah.
I feel like then that's when like all the screenings and stuff started happening. So yeah, it was a 6-month process, but I found out that I was officially going to LA, let's say on a Wednesday, and we were flying out on Saturday.
Okay, that's
So it was
wild.
quick.
What is the most bizarre part of the casting process? I'll go first for The
Yeah,
Bachelor, just so
please
you can see
share.
it, and then I want to
Yeah.
hear yours. The most bizarre thing was we had to do a 200 question, I think it was 600 question.
Oh my God.
It's like a 600 question psych test, and we had to meet with a psychologist. So
Mm.
he was like already in our brain, and we had to like work that angle. And then the second thing was we just had a one ITM, so it's just one camera looking at one-on-one. And then they're like, okay, now we got to go to the next step, almost like we're in a maze. And they open a door, and there was like 50 producers, and we had to like sit in the middle of them. And it was just like getting grill session. So that was the most bizarre. How about for Love is
Okay,
Blind?
were you
Anything crazy?
nervous?
Was I nervous? Yeah, of course I was
That's
nervous.
wild.
Yeah, they had a little box, and I had to pull something out, and it was just a word. It was lion. And it was like, they were like, all right, well, tell us about a lion. I go, oh, my favorite movie's Lion King. And then they threw me a pillow. I just started singing, and I just didn't give a shit. I was like, I did the Lion King thing.
What?
That was all casting.
No
How about
way.
Love is Blind? There's got to be
Oh my
some
God.
kind of crazy thing, or like the
Okay.
weirdest question they asked.
I feel like no one else got this. But there was a moment where we were getting filmed. So they kind of did like an interview that they filmed you at home, but they would ask you questions, and then they basically piled it together, made a little like casting video for the producers that were casting. So at one point towards the end, I don't know what this casting recruiter director was thinking, but he says, we were talking about love and my favorite songs, and I said, oh, I love Selena. He's like, oh, why don't you sing us like a little song? I was like, you want me to like sing? He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I think I like sang like Como la Flor or something. And I was like, just jamming out. And I was like, okay, is that enough? And then he loved it, adored it, was like, that was so perfect, they're gonna love it. And I'm like, okay. I thought that was odd because I don't think anyone else had to sing like on the
you're doing
spot.
karaoke.
Yeah, so which I love karaoke,
Yeah.
but that was like really odd.
So
I think for me,
That
but it
is a
shows my
little-
personality.
It shows your personality. Exactly.
And yours too, like that you can
so
like
We'll just
in a
turn it on just like
moment.
that, you know?
Yeah.
In the recap, guys, stay tuned. We're gonna talk a little bit about Selena and her story because that's all. You could do a whole episode on that. So stay tuned for the recap. Okay, so you're discovered to go on the show.
Yeah.
Did you have to like pretty much sign your life away with the contract? Because for The Bachelor, there was no negotiate, at least from the beginning. Like when we first got the contract, you go to Paradise and stuff like that, you can work it. But the first contract, there's no negotiating. Did you guys kind of have to sign it all away?
Yeah, it was pretty much this is what it is. And I think one thing to remember about season 2 and 3 is that we were filmed simultaneously. So technically, I only had season 1 to go off of, and really production only really had one full like season and exposure to like what would happen, like what happened right after that first season came out. So there was no season 2 currently out. There wasn't, I think, that experience of having two other so we were just still so new. I felt like that it was kind of like, hey, this is your opportunity, like take it. And I was in a place where I read it, and I, had some questions here and there, and then I think the one question I did have, I was like, "Do you guys do STD testing? Like,
Yeah.
because we don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know who if
Sure.
you're gonna get engaged or what's gonna." And they were like, "Well, and they kind of like I think ended up I don't remember how they answered that question, but I was just like that was the one thing that came from I was like, "You never know," because I think in the Bachelor
We all
Nation,
get
like,
blood, yeah,
you
blood
guys have
tested and
to yeah,
everything.
like all the
And Love Is Blind
things.
doesn't do that. I'm surprised by that.
I At the time, they didn't
Yeah.
require it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't
Interesting.
require it. But
Okay.
we actually did talk about it, my fiancé at the time. We said, like, "Do you have results from recently that you wanna share?" We
Sure.
we did off camera have that discussion.
Yeah, pretty
Mhm.
wild. Do you, when you go on Love Is Blind, is there any way to negotiate like a stipend or pay anything, or is it you
I
don't
can
get paid?
imagine that there's probably room for negotiation in any situation. Like, I'm always gonna ask, like,
Yeah.
just because, like, I think, um it is a lot that we're going through, and I think they know that, and we're not actors, we're definitely
Yeah.
not paid actors, in that sense, but yeah, I think there would probably be room for negotiation,
Yeah.
especially after you
Yeah.
do the first rounds and you
Yeah.
go on, like, kinda like you said, a different show that's a branch
Yeah,
off
of
of
course
that.
when you do that. But to go
Yeah,
on Love Is Blind, they pay you
yeah.
something? I
There
didn't think because in Bachelor we don't get paid at all, except the lead. The lead got paid.
Yeah, there is an article that wrote about it that talked about a stipend that
Huh.
was
Okay.
provided for the Love Is Blind
So
like
there's some
cast,
type
and
of
I think it
stipend.
stays
Okay.
pretty consistent.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
hmm
cool.
But
All right.
again, it depends on where. If you only make it to through week 1, you
Yeah.
go home, and that's all you get,
Yeah. Because
right?
it's yeah,
Versus
usually a time thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. How many
Mhm.
weeks does it film then?
I want to say, and that's funny. I think it's 8 to 13. I don't know why I'm remembering 13,
Yeah.
but I know for sure like it was somewhere about 2.5 months. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And then when you, because you went through the process to the end, we have Neil Lane in the Bachelor world who comes and lets you pick out a ring, and then you get the ring, and then after like 2 years, a year or two, if I'll look it up, we'll go over in the recap. You can you can keep it, but if not, you have to give it back.
Oh,
Do they help at all with the ring or anything like that?
so I didn't pay for anything when it
Okay.
came to like
Yeah.
anything related to the filming, and I
Okay.
think that's something to like like we had budgets, or
Okay.
we had like even planning our wedding. I mean, technically had a wedding planner. My assistant producer was like, "What do you want to eat?
Wow.
What are the colors that you want?" So they really, because I think my experience and what I believe Love Is Blind truly is about is really finding that love connection between two completely different people behind a wall. Like, you notice that in the on the show, the first like couple of minutes of season 1 is just the pods, but we are in the pods for 10 days. So imagine 10 days in the pods plus all the couples that get to know each other. They only show you a glimpse of what happens in the pods
Of
because
course. Of
it's
course.
not so much about like who the original cast was, which
Yeah.
I think is great. Like, they really focus on the relationships, and they really want these couples to succeed. And I always felt supported in my relationship. If I think it was Zenab and Cole got a chance to do like a counseling therapy session before they went to the altar. So that was a scene that they were able to do together, and you
Wow.
didn't get to see it, but
Yeah.
so things like that, like they really do focus on, hey, we want these connections to actually thrive, so they give you that best opportunity. And literally, if I could have another wedding, it would
Yeah.
be a Love Is Blind
Yeah,
wedding that
get
like
one of them
someone
then.
plans it for me and like I just get to pick what color and what food. Yeah.
That's great that they, like, support you because it's a crazy process, like, it's wild so
Yeah.
that they still support financially with, like, covering that stuff. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's important. That's
Yeah.
really even, like, the dresses and the wear, like, all the
Yeah.
type of fashion, it's they take care of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
great.
I mean, wardrobe wise, we don't get like stylists, we don't get makeup people.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say 99% of what I did on the show was part of just being a cast member.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
how long do you spend actually, like, dating blind? How long is that process?
In the
Yeah,
pods?
that's
Yeah, so it's actually so you date up to 8 days of dating. Night and like morning and night, 8
okay.
days. But on day 9 is when you go to proposal day. So we had about 7 couples. We actually had exactly 7 couples go to proposal day. 5 of those guys
Yeah,
asked, actually technically 6 because I got 2 proposals.
yeah.
So 6 guys went to proposal day and asked, and then 2 of those guys went to proposal day and in the pod told the women, "I'm not ready to ask you to marry me."
Got it,
So,
okay.
so yeah, technically that was day 9, and by day 10 you get to actually see each other for the first time.
That's wild. Some
Yeah,
of the things we don't get to see on TV behind the scenes too.
yeah,
Let me ask you about this. I'm in the midst right now of surveying a lot of the leads from the Bachelor and Bachelorette
mhm,
to ask them in the fantasies because the only time they really get no cameras, no nothing is in the fantasy suite. Fantasy suite. So I said, in the fantasy suite, at any point are you talking about careers, finances, numbers, like some of the
mm,
foundational business things
yeah,
that matter as a unit in a relationship? And I'm getting a material amount of no's, 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 no's,
yeah,
but I have a couple yeses. When you have off camera time, I know we got to hear you talk a little bit about your business on camera. Are any of those conversations happening when you talk to the other couples? Do you think they're happening often? And just like, what's your take on that?
yeah. I think that each couple really did make that decision for themselves, meaning that some couples really refrained from having on camera conversations about family planning, about finances. And I know that for a fact that they had those conversations, they just didn't do it on camera and they chose to keep very private.
Yeah.
Same thing with season 2. Actually, I'm friends with some of the girls from season 2, and they also said like we as a couple said we will not fight on camera.
Hmm.
We won't. So I think in general, like it really comes down to the couple. My personal opinion is that who I am, cameras on or off, you need to know that it's not going to change. And if
Okay.
I'm firm with you on X topic off camera, it's going to be the same on camera. So I didn't shy away from having honest conversations. And I think my partner at the time was very open to that as well.
Yeah.
And he didn't hold back on what his thoughts and feelings were about finances or other topics. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. I think all the real estate stuff that you had to discuss and getting on the same page with the partner and stuff. I think that's so important
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
amazing. All right, well, I want to transition a little bit to post show. Post
Yeah.
show, you get out, you have all these followers, you're already a businesswoman. We made that crystal
Yeah.
clear, and you've had a ton of success. What are you thinking is like your next step in this world of like how do you capitalize on this opportunity while making impact the way you've done it? Like what has been your thought process?
Yeah, so I think after the show, again, our show it is so real in the sense that like I was involved, my family was involved, my relationship was put on blast, like everything happened, and then for a year and a half it was complete silence, meaning that I didn't know what the final edit was going to be. I didn't know if you can only assume from season 1. Again, we only had the example of season 1. You could only assume that maybe I would get a few followers and people would be like, "Oh, I relate to you on this topic," but you don't really know what's going to come from it. So um I needed time to heal, for sure. It took me about 6 months after we stopped filming before I started therapy, just because I took those first 6 months to travel, like work, keep myself busy. And then I realized, like, okay, like slow down and like fix what you feel is still like hurting. And so once I started therapy and I really started to recognize like what I needed to do to prepare for the premiere of our season, I knew that there was going to be more to my story than what you saw. And I knew that using social media as a platform to be that voice and to whether it's the voice of being a representation to women of color, if it's a representation to women of color in business, if it's a representation of being the only woman in a room in a real estate environment, I just knew that like as I was healing through the process, I was also gaining so much more love for me and who I am and what my boundaries are that the show dropped. And I was like, I had about 3 months before the show came out. So, about summertime of 2022, I started calling friends that were in the industry. And I was like, all right, like social media managers and other friends that are agents for celebrities. And I'm like, what do I need to do if this goes well? Like, how do I really advance as a brand? I will always be Nancy from Love is Blind, and I'm so thankful for that. But I knew that the bigger picture is the Nancy Rodriguez,
Mm.
meaning my brand and who I am.
Yeah.
And I think for me again, like overall, I've had such a positive experience with the audience, meaning like fans on social media, fans, and I get so recognized in New York. It's almost like how did I've actually said this. I'm like, how did you recognize me? I have like glasses, a hat, like I'm like looking bummy, and people are so like excited, and they're like, usually it's a personal story that they tell me in like 5 seconds before like the next train stop comes, and it's such a beautiful interaction that I just know that for me the brand that I've been able to create came from the platform of Love is Blind. And I'm
Yeah.
so thankful for that.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. Here's a hopefully a tip for the money mafia. That's our listenership. When you talk to all these people about how to not make yourself Nancy from Love is Blind, how to brand yourself as Nancy Rodriguez,
Yeah.
what do you think the best couple tips or tricks you were told to do that you implemented that worked that maybe someone back home could implement into their branding?
No, absolutely. I think that for me, it was hearing authenticity. That was something that came up in so many of my meetings was you've got to be authentic because because again, they don't the people I was talking to, I could tell them what happened on the show, but the show hadn't come out yet. So
Sure.
your edit could really be any direction. So the main thing that I said from filming Love is Blind is that I was truly myself 100%. I'm as quirky as you see me. I'm as silly as you see. So I really needed to embrace that is that authenticity of what you're going to see on the show when it comes out is what you're going to get after. So so yeah, I think for me it was really taking my social media and thinking about what I was posting and why I was posting it. Whether it's, you know, a selfie with no makeup or a get ready with me in the morning or just the authentic things that I'm doing or if it's business related to like where did I start? How did I pay $100,000 off in debt? You know,
Mhm.
like those things were really part of my story that I wanted to make sure resonates through my Instagram and my social media platforms. And I think the authenticity really does bring it back to the why, which keeps you then going. Meaning, once you know, being authentic allows you to understand your why for social media, and brands love that.
Mhm.
I really do find that brands, and again, the advice I was given was be authentic so that brands can see who you are. So if you're already wearing, you know, Zara clothes, just post it and authentically be that image for those brands.
Yeah.
And so I started to think, I remember that day after I left a meeting, I sat down on an Excel sheet and I wrote down all the categories of my life. I put lifestyle. What are the brands I use? Which ones matter and which ones do I believe in? And then the next category was like beauty and fitness or beauty and hair and beauty or something. And then I wrote down the tools and the things that I like. So in my mind, 3 months before the show, that's what I was doing. I was calculating in my head, like, what are the brands I believe in? What brands do I not believe in? What are like the no-go brands that I would
Mhm.
never want to promote
Mhm.
or be a part of, you know, because of my personal ethical reasons. And I think those two tips there really helped me to stay organized. Once everything happened, then it was taking all the proper meetings, getting official representation, figuring out the ins and the outs. So as much as I was having those meetings and they thought they were interviewing me, 100%, I was interviewing that agency or that a representation company as well.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Meg here. So Meg is our vice president of business development for Rewired Talent Management, and she works with you on a day-to-day basis. And you said you interviewed her, and she did a pretty good job, huh?
Amazing.
What do
She
you
did
What do you
amazing.
think was the hardest question you asked her that she answered that you
Yeah.
were most impressed by?
I really was super impressed when I said to her, it was the last question that I asked her. I said, um, so I said first, have you looked at my social media? She's like,
Mm,
yes, I have. Like, I've looked through it. And she mentioned some of the posts that I had made. And I said, can you give me 3 tips on what I can do to improve? And actually, I asked every company this. So, like, I already had a collection of tips and tricks. And what she was able to give to me, I can't think of it at the top of my
sure.
head what
Yeah.
exactly it was. But if you let me pull out my Excel sheet, I know it's there. And she just gave me 3 really good tips about managing my account and what I need to do to really make sure that I stand out authentically with the idea of connecting with brands and making that connection with those brands.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
called her before our interview just to do some prep, and one of the big things she said is what Nancy does different than majority of the clients that I manage is consistency and quality. She's like, it's always extremely high quality content and it's consistent. And it helps me, it makes me think about just the way you plan and everything with your Excel files, your strategy, your thought process. Do you have like a posting schedule you really adhere to, or are you just off the cuff putting consistent, good quality stuff out there as much as you can? How do you build a business model around that?
Yeah, no, I think the business model for me from the beginning, meaning like let's say the last 6 months, the first 3 of the last 6 months, the first 3 months really was experimentation. Meaning like I'm gonna post this thing that is me doing something, let's say a DIY or something. I'm gonna post it and I wanna analyze it after, see how it does. So where I'm at now is to the point where I know what kind of posts are gonna do well,
Hmm,
so I have an inventory of if I know that my engagement is low,
yeah.
then I know, okay, by Wednesday, I need to drop
So
this
what
kind of.
works? Like what are some of the things that your audience is engaged to?
Yeah, so I
Spicy.
feel like some of my top posts really have to do with like women empowerment when I talk about topics that are very real to the world. And sometimes all it takes is the right audio, meaning background music, not
Mhm.
even voice. It takes the right audio, the quality content, right? You've got to film with a good camera and good ideas of like angles and the video itself, the content or the pictures themselves, and then it's really finding that engagement in the caption.
I like
So
that.
no words in the actual video, but when you actually engage in the captions, that really does. Um, I find that people can connect with that, and it's so important to write back.
Mhm.
I remember at the very beginning I was overdoing it and I was like spending and after I would post, I would spend at least 2 hours just replying back to comments and being super
Wow.
engaging, and that doing that times like 3 cuz it was on TikTok, Instagram, and then on YouTube. And so doing that just became too much, so I found a way to make it to scale it down
Sure.
and at least engage with the first 10 to 15 people who comment or say something or interact with your post.
Extremely,
Yeah.
extremely thorough. And I know you have a page called Financy Talks, and you already said 100K in debt. This is a business podcast. I got to
Yeah.
ask you the 100K in debt. How did you get in the debt? How'd you get out? Give us the quick synopsis.
Yeah, so how I got in it is that I went to college with no money, so I had to pull out loans for my undergrad. That was about 30 grand. Then I went to grad school and that was another, let's say I'm not good at math, which is so funny. Math is
I
not
got
my
you. I can
thing.
do that.
So let's say 30 and then we're going to
So
guesstimate
we're at
actually
60,
so we're at
40 left, 40 left.
no, we're then it was not 30, it was another 40. So
Okay.
we're at 70.
Okay.
And then the day that I graduated from my undergrad, when I was going to go to grad school, I bought a $30,000 car on a note. It was a brand new Kia Sorento, and I was like, I'm going to California. I should have a car. the best one on the lot. Mistake, wrong.
Mm.
Don't do that. And so, yeah, that's where $100,000 happened. However, I did have a career in speech and language pathology that afforded me the opportunity to have a good income where I was making about $6,000 a month. So from that, the first 2 years after being a when I started being a speech pathologist, not only was I a speech pathologist, but I also had other jobs as well, just like online jobs, side gigs, things like that. And at the 2-year mark is when I was ready to buy my first property, my income producing property, which was a duplex. I literally closed on my property June 6th or 9th, one of those. On the very next day, I called all of my banks, asked for the payout. I called my car note people and I said, tell me what the final number is. The reason why I was able to do that is because for the last 2 years, I had been saving and calculating all of my income, saving as much as I could, going by the Dave Ramsey baby steps process of
Yeah.
like trying to pay debt off. And literally the day that I called and made the checks, and I remember I went to one of my banks and I had like 20,000 in there for savings, and I went in and I said, "Can I have it all?" And they were like, "Are you sure? Is everything okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're fine." I had to talk to like the branch manager. They were like, "So what's going on?" I'm like, "I'm just paying my debt off, y'all. Like I'm ready." And they were just like, "Are you safe?" I'm like, "I'm safe. I just need to pay this off." So they needed like explanation as to why I was doing this. So yeah, I think that was like the sped up process. I think for me, the idea of paying debt off to be financially free had to happen
Mhm.
in order for me to see the future later. And it was truly embracing being uncomfortable for a short amount of time, knowing that I was going to have a long-term gratification of financial freedom.
Yeah, I think it all just comes down to taking control, understanding the numbers, living in a state of discomfort,
Yeah.
but that feeling of financial freedom's amazing. We now know you're in real estate investment. Did you have any issues getting any type of real estate loans because of that debt or no?
So no. And the reason why is because the first property that I have, which is my residential home currently still in Dallas, I used a first time home buyers program. And with that first time home buyers program, they don't care how much debt you have. They do calculate debt to ratios,
Sure.
income to debt
Yep.
ratio
Yeah,
incomes.
that's the income
Thank
ratio.
you.
Yep, yep,
I was like, that sounded backwards. Um,
yep.
and so I sometimes do that, by the way. I think it's like being bilingual and Spanish speaking that sometimes I'm like, oh, my brain is glitching. And so, yeah, they were really supportive of like, okay, you have this much debt, $100,000 worth. What's your monthly payment? And what they did with this program, it's called NACA,
Yeah,
NACA. What they did with this program is that they don't what they do is they look at your qualification status specifically on your monthly what's coming in and what's going out, so that it's a true calculation of most banks will tell you what's your credit score, this and that will get you this rate. It's
hmm,
quick, you can get a pre-qual
yeah.
like within a day. With NACA, you do have to do the work and you do have to show them like I'm literally spending $500 a month on groceries and I'm actually saving $2,000 a month, and you have to show that documentation. So it is a very tedious and rigorous process, but I wanted it.
Hmm.
And if I wanted it and I wanted the benefits, which by the way, NACA has amazing benefits to being a first time home buyer, um, that I just knew that that's what I needed to do.
Just in case there
Yeah.
is some part of the money mafia listening that hasn't bought a home, they are a
Yeah.
first-time home buyer. What are some things they should know or could know about NACA through you, given your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing is just go online, NACA.com, NACA. And what's really good about the website, it's very user friendly. The first step, it says become a home buyer. You sign up for a workshop. The reason why you would want to do NACA, number one, is they do give you the interest rate that is today listed on the market. That's the rate that you're going to qualify for, no matter what your credit score is.
Oh, wow.
The only exception is that you cannot have anything in debt collections. You can have debt. I had $100,000.
Not
You just
collections.
can't have anything in collections.
Okay.
And so then once you go through the process, it's not based off of income. So you could be making $500,000 and still qualify for this first time homebuyers program. And then once the good thing about the workshop is that it will tell you everything you need to know to make that next step to move forward. Yeah.
Okay, so no, so you don't have to have these income thresholds. It's
hmm
not credit based,
hmm
fair interest rate,
hmm
and
Oh, and they pay for your closing
they
costs.
pay for your closing
All of your
costs.
closing
Wow,
costs. You can also roll in a rehab loan if you decide that you want to do cosmetic work, or let's say you want these walls in your living room. You have to apply. It's part of the process, but you just have to make sure to set that up during your closing period that you want to add an extra 10K as long as it's part of your budget that you're approved for.
sure.
You can add an extra 10K to build a new kitchen, to get these walls, to do things like that.
Do you know
So
the biggest things that eliminate someone from getting it? I would assume a higher income threshold, or if you make a certain amount, you couldn't qualify.
no, not at all. There's no threshold. So what
Really?
usually happens, and this is something that like some of my richest friends that I have that don't own property yet and want to own property, when I tell them about this program and get them like to go to the first meeting, they do nothing to follow up. So they don't, because again, it is rigorous. And what I mean
Yeah.
by rigorous is that they're going to sit there, give you an Excel sheet, and be like, tell me everything you spent on clothes. What's that number?
Mm-hmm.
What do you spend on groceries? What do you spend on gas? And the reason why is that this particular program, the idea of being a first time home buyer is that I think, sure, everyone wants property. That's a cute idea, but it's cute.
Mm-hmm.
To actually own property takes a lot of responsibility.
Sure.
And sometimes it really can be owning property might be a bigger headache than what you're ready for. So the program is going to weed out the weak, basically.
Got
And
it.
if you're not in a point where you truly understand your personal finances and you're okay with being tedious and digging into, oh my God, I overspent in my credit card, then you're not ready for home buying
Yeah, I think
or
it's a
that
great
program with all
example.
those benefits.
There you go. NACA
Yeah.
could be a really good opportunity for you or someone you know. So check it out. We'll talk more about it in the recap if you want any more information. Nancy, well, I got you. I got to talk about two things. We got to get into a real estate transaction, like give us the idea of what one looks like. But before we do that, I want to talk about managing the personal and professional world. You do it marvelously, and you do it in a wild fashion, right? You have family that you work with, you have an ex that you work with.
Yeah.
We saw Bartice, who just from my vantage point, maybe wasn't a little thrilled with it. Maybe it was a little bit of leading with ego. I don't want to even talk about the dollars and cents now. I want to talk, how do you manage your professional world, continuing to develop your brand, but still also taking into the consideration of possibly a partner or an ex, or
Mhm.
maybe the emotion or resentment with an ex, all those things, and still
Yeah.
working as one.
That is a great question. I'm sitting here like, wow, this is like therapy 101.
You're like, how do I do
I
that?
know. I think the first thing that comes to mind in that question and in all those aspects, but specifically business and personal, is truly having grace for me to make mistakes because I'm not perfect. And I come from like for example, let's to pick a topic, right? In business, I've come from a place of way overspending on things that I probably shouldn't have on a project, to now where I'm like very cognizant of how much I'm spending. So I really do appreciate that. Oh crap, I made that really big mistake and bought that really expensive house that one time, but I'm not going to do that mistake again because I'm going to learn from it. And I'm going to be today in a better place where I've given myself grace and I've learned from my mistakes that I can be in a position um to to do better and learn from that. So I think really giving myself grace
Hmm.
to make mistakes. And I think with carrying my like professional, my business relationships and things like that, especially my ex, right? That's a huge thing. And I think at the end of the day of what we went through as a couple is that he is an amazing person. And I know this is like the world listening, whoever might be like, wait, what? How? I don't date assholes. I don't date people with ill intentions. I do a really good job of weeding those type of people out of my life.
Yeah.
Even when I was with Bartice, know that deep down inside, who I knew in the pods, who I know as a person, it's not quite the full edit you got to see on the
Okay.
show. So you
Okay.
saw the worst parts of our relationship. And I say that only because I do have an amazing business partner who used to be my partner, and I feel like I choose well when it comes to people that I revolve myself romantically with. Um, so with that said, Yeah, I don't know. It's like a radar. Maybe it's more of a radar. But at the end of the day, too, like I'm not like it's not like I know if you're a good person or not. It's I have to be a good person and I have to be kind and be value that stuff about myself and live that kind of life to attract that to me.
Yeah.
So I feel like I tend to attract the best kind of people, whether it's relationships, platonic, business. I attract that kind of energy in my life.
I love that. Let's do this hypothetical though. You meet your future husband.
Yeah.
You know it's your future husband.
Yeah.
Your future husband, you have to have a conversation. You're like, well, I own a business with my ex.
Yeah.
How do you handle that conversation? Do you just make it clear from the get-go, this is how it is? You're going to trust me, you're not going to trust me, and it's not going to change?
Yeah.
Do you give sensitivity to someone that might want to change your professional dynamic because it's your ex? Like, how do you handle that conversation? I ask because I
Yeah.
think there are more people than you might know that are listening to this that probably have some type of professional
Yeah.
dealings with their partner, and it could impact their actual professional work. And you seem to have such a good hold on it, and that's why I'd wonder how you'd approach that.
Yeah. So I think in a relationship where you have to accept me for who I am and what I bring to the table, um, I am where I'm at today because I've made professional decisions with my business partner to be successful, to be here. He is my broker as well. So I feel like, and it's happened, and this is where I'm like kind of pulling this information from, but I have asked, how do you feel first? Like,
Yeah.
I want to hear you, safe space. Tell me what your true thoughts are about me having business with my ex. When you open up that conversation and just let people talk, it's amazing what people will just truly open up about. And I think that depending on that reaction, right? If it's whatever reaction you get from that partner that you're wanting to like you said, potentially, like you see this as a husband or wife for the future, I think really channeling what their response is and giving them that safe space to say like I'm not comfortable with it. If
Yeah.
that's what they say, then I need to be okay with figuring out how do we make it comfortable.
Got it.
And it is my job to make you feel, as my partner, it is my job to make you feel secure with us, that I have boundaries set
Hmm.
with my business partner. When we talk on the phone, it's always a text before, hey, do you have 5 minutes? It's never a quick phone call and we're just talking willy-nilly for no reason.
Chit chat and
We're
stuff
not
like
right.
that.
We're not
Yeah.
meeting for no reason. We're meeting because there's a meeting to be met, or we're meeting contractors, or we're changing roofs, or like he needs cash because I have cash and we're meeting up, or we're doing a walkthrough. So I think for me, the daunting idea of like, oh my God, you're in business with your ex
Yeah.
is really not that daunting.
Yeah.
But it's truly opening up a space with my partner in the future to have the ability to say, I'm not comfortable with XYZ. And then it's my job to be like, well, I hear you, I respect you, I validate you. Let me tell you what it really is. And also, I have yet to introduce a partner to my ex, but I've asked my ex, would you be down to like when I'm ready to like, we've had that conversation.
Yeah.
And it was yes, absolutely. When
That's
the
awesome.
right person comes, they're going to accept me for who I am. And hopefully, we're all doing business together.
There you go.
Like let's buy the next apartment complex together. Who's bringing in like 100K? You are. All right, let's do this.
That's going to be a wild business group. I mean, I
Yeah.
could just the hierarchy, who's the CEO, who's
Right.
working what angle. They could do a whole TV show on that. But let me ask you this, real estate wise, what type of real estate do you own? How much of that do you own? What does your real estate world look like?
Yeah, so I'm at 11 properties now, and I do focus on residential properties. In the past, I've had a few multifamily homes, which are like duplexes. I've only had up to two units under one roof, so a duplex. I haven't had more than that. But I think when it comes to real estate, where I've really seen my success is in the midterm rental space. So there are short-term rentals, midterm rentals, and then your traditional leases. So I'm not a flipper yet.
Yeah. Well, how would you time length? What would a midterm be considered?
So midterm is 30 days,
Okay.
less than a year.
Got it.
So and that's technically the terms, and actually it also depends on your city restrictions. So some cities and counties will say 14 days or more
Yeah.
is considered a midterm rental, and then you actually bypass the short-term rental laws that forbid like for example, Airbnb or VRBO from being listings in
Yeah,
that city. So like I think for a while, New York, if not now, they still or they had some really big
they
restrictions
do.
on
Yeah, I think
short-term
so.
rentals, which are
Yeah.
again, I don't know New York rules, but it could be 14 days or less, or 30 days or
Okay,
29
let's
days.
let's talk about this midterm
Yeah.
renter. Where do you find those renters typically?
Yeah, so when it comes to identifying the midterm rental tenant or guest, it truly is figuring out why are they coming to stay at a house, right? It's going to be for vocational reasons, professional reasons. So I would say 90% of the people that have stayed with me have been general contractors,
Mm,
nurses that are coming, students. Um, it can also be again to me this is technically like business related, but insurance agencies where families get displaced because of a storm or something like a flood, bursted pipes. I have tenants in one of my places that have been there for 8 months now
mhm.
because when we had a really bad storm, their floors in the 5,000 square foot
Oh,
home
wow.
got completely like messed up. And then another storm came. And
Yeah.
then so that messed that up again. So, with that said, it's really that type of tenant who is looking for business reasons to want to book your place.
Are those
Yeah.
tenants then coming to you, or are you working with some of the, like, staffing nursing companies where they know there's gonna be moves, and the insurance companies where the insurance companies say, "Hey, I have a couple that needs a place." Which angle do you
Yeah, so
primarily work?
that's a great question. So I'm very thankful that the listings that I have and the way that I write my listings attracts the business. So I
Mm,
actually have not done a lot of marketing. I haven't had to create specific relationships with specific corporate housing. They really do trickle in because of the way that I set up my listings, and I
mm.
make it very specific in the type of pictures that I show and the reviews that I get. And then again, how I set up my calendar to make sure that I attract the nurses that are coming into town and things like
Got
that.
it.
And I get a lot of actually referrals too. So nurses that have come in that then have other friends who are now coming to Dallas,
Mhm.
and then they refer me, and then I do give like a referral finder's fee type of thing.
I love that.
So yeah, I've been thankful enough. However, there are programs that will set that up for you.
Oh,
I
that's cool,
think
but they'll probably take some sort of cut, right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll
okay.
they'll because now they're the finder.
Of course, alright.
So I've done a good job of making sure that I get my business come to me.
I love it. We gotta wrap up here and get a
Yeah.
trading secret shortly, but I have just one last question. If someone is very motivated by the way you're empowering them based on what you've done, and they say, you know what, I can do it. I can buy a residential home and I can find a midterm renter. I know I could do this. What would you tell them financially they should think about? How much they should save? Do you have a suggestion on how much they should put for a down payment based on
Mhm.
the structure of a bank loan? Like any tips and tricks like that?
I think for me, the biggest thing would be what are you paying in rent now? Right? Get that number. That should be what you're envisioning your mortgage to be. So if you are struggling to pay for that mortgage, let's say, or I'm sorry, that rent, and you're barely making an extra 500 on top of, like let's say your take home after everything's paid is not significant enough to save. I would say you start with knowing what your expenses are now. And then I think the next step to be ready, right? I mean, you've got to have, not only is it the down payment, you've got to have that emergency fund because, again, being a homeowner is a big responsibility. So if you have to do electrical work and it's an extra 14,000 that you don't have in the bank, but you have this beautiful home and you're excited, like that's going to be, a whammy for you. So I would say it's always good to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses before you even consider getting a loan from for your first time property.
Yep.
And then again, that makes you feel confident on making that big life decision of having a 30-year mortgage under your belt.
I like it. Stack that cash away, then make plays. That's
Yeah.
such good advice. We talked all things. We talked the emotional side of being a business owner, the financial side, the structure, everything in between. Stay tuned to the recap. We'll get a little bit more into real estate. I'll have David ask me all his curious questions. As you know, he will have them. Nancy, we need a trading secret from you, though. It's a secret that people can't learn in a textbook. They can't learn from a professor. They can only learn from you, given your experience. It could be something behind the scenes of Love is Blind. It could be real estate related. It could be about your earnings or spending, some type of trading secret that we can get from only you, Nancy Rodriguez.
Oh gosh, I wasn't ready for this one.
We could
um,
edit the pauses out, so you take your time.
yeah, the best kept secret that I have,
It's your trading secret. So it's like you're
my
giving
trading
someone
secrets.
a little trading secret that they can only get from you.
I would say that the I would say that one of the trading secrets that I have that I wish somebody would have told me is that you can have $10 to your name and still invest.
It's a great one.
You can have
I love that.
$100 left in your bank account and you can still invest. So find a way, whatever extra little money you have, stop going out to eat, use that to invest. There's always a way that you can start investing in something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rich dad, poor dad, kind of. His
Yeah.
whole philosophy about money and the idea of people just stacking it away is kind of useless. Go find people that can give it to you, invest in you, banks,
Yeah.
etc. Use their money to grow. $10,
Yeah.
$100, you could
Yeah.
do it. Nancy, thank you so much for being here on Trading Secrets. Where can everyone find your Instagram, everything you have going on? They want more Nancy Rodriguez. Where can they find it?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun getting a chance to talk about the real stuff, the meat of the empanada, right? So my Instagram and TikTok is the Nancy Rodriguez, and my YouTube channel is the gosh, what is that? It's Nancy Rodriguez Life, and I do have a finance page that talks about finance and also real estate, bridging that conversation together, and that's Fi Nancy Talks. So
Find
Financy
Nancy Talks.
Talks.
I love it. Go give Nancy a follow. And if you have any more real estate questions, I'm sure she'll answer them because she is responding to all you guys out there. Nancy, thank you so much for being on this episode of Trading Secrets.
Thank you for having me.